Hello friends, welcome to ABHQ's channel. In today's video, we're going to configure HSRP, or Hot Standby Router Protocol. HSRP is a Cisco proprietary protocol designed to provide high availability for our default gateways. It groups multiple routers together to a virtual router setup, so if the active router fails, one of the standby routers takes over. It's going to be seamlessly to the end hosts without disruption. Okay, so in this topology, we have the network 192.168.1.0/24, and there are 4 PCs, and all these PCs, including the switches, are in the same subnet. Okay, so for the redundancy, here we have 4 switches: switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, and switch 4. Switch 3 is connected to the R1 and switch 4 is connected to R2. And R1 and R2 are both act as default gateway for these PCs. The IP address on the G00 interface of the R1 is 192.168.1.2, and for R2 it is 192.168.1.3. R1 is connected to the ISP via its serial 030 interface, and R2 is also connected to the ISP via its interface serial 030. The subnet between R1 and the ISP is 90.222.220.0/30, and for R2 and the ISP it is 90.222.221.0/30. Okay? And these are the IP addresses for each interfaces. .1.1. I did some configurations on ISP router, including the loopback interface and interface configurations and a default route to R1 and R2. Okay, so let's go to ISP router and see the configurations first. Let's go to CLI. Let's type enable show running config. Okay, so these are the configurations for ISP router. There is a loopback interface with the IP address 8.8.8.8, and the subnet mask is /32. And this is the configuration for serial 030 interface of ISP router that is connected to R1, and the IP address is 90.222.220.2, and the subnet mask is /30. And for serial 031, the IP address is 90.222.221.2, and the subnet mask is /30 as well. These are 2 default routes that I've configured on ISP router. This default route is towards R1, and the second default route is towards R2. Okay? We're going to configure default routes on R1 and R2 later. Okay? So in this lab, we're going to configure HSRP, Hot Standby Router Protocol, on router 1 and router 2 for high availability and redundancy. Okay, so let's go to R1. First, I want to configure the IP addresses on the interfaces of the router 1. Let's type enable, configure terminal. Let's start from G00. Interface G00, IP address 192.168.1.2. The subnet mask is /24 and no shutdown. Okay, exit. Let's go to interface serial 030. IP address, it is 90.222.220.1. The subnet mask is /30 and no shutdown. Exit. Okay, so the IP configurations on router 1 is complete. Let's go to router 2, CLI, enable, configure terminal. Interface G00, IP address 192.168.1.3. The subnet mask is /24 and no shutdown. Exit. Let's go to interface serial 030. IP address 19.222.221.1. The subnet mask is /30 and no shutdown. Okay, so the IP configuration is complete on both of these routers. Now, I want to configure HSRP. Since I'm on R2, I'm going to configure HSRP on R2 first. Let's go to interface G00 and start the configuration. Interface G00. Standby. Version 2. We're going to configure HSRP version 2. Hit enter and now standby. Then the group number. The group number is from 0 to 4095. I'm going to configure 1. Group number 1 and then the IP. The IP is the virtual IP. The virtual IP is 192.168.1.1. Okay, so let's configure 192.168.1.1. Okay, so now the HSRP is configured. Let's wait for the HSRP to be fully configured now. Okay, so HSRP is configured now. Let's see the configurations. Do, show, standby, brief. Okay, so the interface is G00, the group number is 1, the priority is 100. We haven't configured the priority yet, but I'm going to configure the priority on router 1, okay? So the 100 is the default priority. The state is active, which means R2 is the active router now. And again, the active is local. This local means R2 now because we are on R2 now. And standby is unknown. It's because we haven't configured HSRP on R1 yet. And the virtual IP is the IP address that we configured, 192.168.1.1. Okay? Now that the HSRP is configured on R2, let's go to R1 and configure HSRP in here as well. Let's go to the interface G00, standby, version 2. Okay? And now standby, the group number 1, and IP, the virtual IP, 192.168.1.1. Okay? This is the virtual IP address. Let's hit enter, and now let's wait for the HSRP to be fully configured. Okay, so HSRP is configured. Let's see the configurations on R1 as well. Do show standby brief. Okay, so the interface is G00. We have configured HSRP on G00. The group number is 1. The priority is the default 100. The state is a standby. Okay, so the active router is this router with the IP address 192.168.1.3. This is the IP address of G00 interface of R2, which means the active router is R2. The standby router is local. Again, because we are on the R1, this is the standby router. And the virtual IP is 192.168.1.1. Okay, so the virtual IP on both routers are the same. Okay, so we want the R1 to be the active router and the R2 to be the standby router. So now let's configure the R1 to be active router. We're going to change the priority of 100, which is default, to a higher priority because the priority determines whether a router become active or standby. Okay, so I'm on interface G00 configuration. Let's type the command standby group 1 and priority. The priority is 100 by default. Let's set a priority higher than 100. Let's configure 101. Okay, let's hit enter. And now there is another command, standby 1 preempt. The preempt tells the router, for example, if R1 is the active router and R2 is the standby router. Okay? So let's say that R1 goes down and R2 becomes the active router. And then when R1 becomes active, the R1 is going to get its position as active router again because we have configured the preempt command here. Okay, so let's hit enter. Okay, so let's type a show command and see the configuration. Do show standby brief. Okay, so again, it is on R1. The interface is G00. The group number is 1. The priority is 101. This is the priority that we configured. The state is active, which is good. We wanted the R1 to become the active router, and it is the active router now. The active is local. Again, it means it is R1. And the standby is the router with the IP address 192.168.1.2. This is not the IP address of R2. It is the IP address of R1, which means the HSRP haven't been updated fully yet. So let's type the show command once more and see if the configuration updates. Okay, so yeah, the configuration is updated. Again, the interface is G00, the group number is 1, the priority is 101, the state is active, and the standby router is this router. This is the IP address of G00 interface of router 2. Okay? And the virtual IP address is 192.168.1.1. Okay? So we configured HSRP on router 1 and router 2, and router 1 is the active router 2 is the standby router. So now that the configuration of HSRP is complete, let's go and configure the default routes on R1 and R2. Okay? So let's type exit in global configuration mode. Let's type IP route network 0.0.0.0. This includes all networks. And the subnet mask is again all zeros. And next, the IP address of the next hop. In this case, it is the IP address of serial 030 interface of ISP router. Okay, so let's type the IP address 90.222.220.2. Okay, the default route on R1 is configured. Let's go to R2. Exit. Let's type IP route. Again, 0.0.0.0 and subnet mask all zeros again. And the IP address of the next hop, this time it is the interface serial 031 of ISP router. The IP address is 90.222.221.2. Okay, let's hit enter. And now the default route is configured on R2 as well. Okay, so let's go to PCA now and configure the IP address for PCA and ping the loopback interface on ISP router. First, let's configure the IP address 192.168.1.11. This is the IP address of PCA. The subnet mask is /24 and the default gateway is the virtual IP address 192.168.1.1. Notice that we didn't use any of these IP addresses configured on these interfaces of the routers. We have configured the virtual IP address because we configured HSRP. Okay, let's close out of this. Let's go to the command prompt and let's ping 8.8.8.8. Okay, so the ping is successful. And now I want to see which path did the PCA took in order to reach the ISP router. Okay, let's type the command trace RT and then the IP address 8.8.8.8. Okay, It took the path to R1 and then reached 8.8.8.8. This is the IP address of the G00 interface of R1. Okay, so this is what we wanted. The R1 is the active router. The PCA took this path to reach the ISP router, okay? So now I want to turn off the router 1 and see if the ping still works. Okay, let's go to R1. Don't forget to save the configurations on R1 before turning it off. Okay, physical. I'm going to turn off this router. Okay, so let's say that R1 went down. Let's go to PCA again and let's ping the IP address on the router, on the ISP. Okay, so the active router is down, but the ISP router is reachable. Okay, so now let's see which path that it took in order to reach the ISP router. Trace RT 8.8.8.8. Okay, because of the HSRP, this time the PCA took the path to R2 and then to ISP. Okay, this is the IP address of R2's G00 interface. Okay, so now let's go to R1 and turn on the R1 again. Okay, it's going to take some time. Now the R1 should take its role as active router again because we have configured preempt command on HSRP. Okay, so let's type enable show standby brief. Okay, so still the active router is this router and the standby is unknown. So the HSRP is not updated yet. So let's wait a while. Let's type the command again and there we go. The standby router is the R2. Okay, so this router is active. When the router 1 was down, the R2 was the active router. And now that the R1 is up again, the R1 is the active router. Okay, so if I go to PCA, again, if I type trace RT to see which path will it take to go to ISP, it will take the path from R1. Okay, so this was all for HSRP configuration in this video. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you in the next video.